In the last episode, we were introduced to the Galapagos Galaxy, the Amazon Sector, and the Sucun System, the fourth planet of which lies within the habitable zone. Named Eden, this planet will be the first we shall look at as life begins to develop. It has been 300 million years since the first gas and dust collected to form the system, and in that time, Eden has cooled and is now covered in a vast ocean speckled with landmasses. In the depths of this ocean, the natural biochemistry that surrounds hydrothermal vents have sparked the first life, in exact processes that are still unknown to us. To simulate the early development of single-celled organisms, I've designed this game. Unfortunately, I don't have the 3D modeling or programming skills to turn this into the next Spore, but for our purposes this will suffice. It should also be noted that this is unlikely to be a realistic depiction of the actual development of cellular life, but should give a good idea on how long life will take to become multicellular. So, for this simulation, each coloured blob represents an organism. Each turn, they can perform one action: move or eat. For the first experiment, I have no players, so each cell will simply move towards the nearest consumable, and then, if safe, eat it. They will always attempt to avoid danger where possible by either retreating or moving in a tangent to the threat. In the early game, these nutrients are all that will give energy. Each will provide one energy point, which can be saved. Once a cell has consumed a nutrient, it will then reappear in a random location on this 20 by 20 board. As with life itself, a random chance element will drive the competition, so only the best suited will survive. These larger nutrients require the protein motors perk to consume, but once able, they provide 3 energy. They too will then respawn at a random location. These icons are the viruses, deadly even in the earliest days of life. If they are allowed to perform an infect action, then the cell is immediately destroyed and replaced with a new virus. They may also take one action per turn, however, so clever moves will avoid them until you can gain immunity. This is where the perks will be saved and displayed. To gain a new perk, you must have enough energy to perform a mitosis split, the energy needed being equal to the number of perks currently unlocked. Once split, you then have an additional cell that can be placed on any unoccupied adjacent square and can be used alongside your original cells. Any unlocked perks immediately applied to all owned cells. Next we have 2 items simply for interesting details. The first is the date monitor. Each turn will be equal to 100 million years, so the date since formation will be displayed here. Next is the atmospheric composition. This won't be truly changing until an organism evolves the photosynthesis. However, at 1 billion years, any lingering hydrogen and helium will be removed, and at 1.5 billion, any unusual trace gases will also be removed. For example, this atmosphere randomly generated a large amount of neon. An interesting thought for life to evolve around, but I am completely unsure of how to actually use that. So, without any further delay, let's begin the game of life. So I thought I'd just add this little bit at the end of the episode, just as little personal opinions on this part. Obviously, it was all randomly generated, so just going through a random number generator to pop up what perks were chosen. And I'm honestly surprised just how many of the organisms evolved DNA so quickly. In all the previous testing, it was mostly things like flagellum that were evolved. So I think that's the reason why life managed to develop so fast on this planet. The blue organisms as well, evolving the plastids ridiculously early on, meant that they were able to do the photosynthesis and just jump up ahead of all the other organisms far faster than they normally would be able to. The other counter to that is, despite it being a level 1 perk, none of the other organisms evolves consume, which would allow them to eat another cell and gain the energy that they have. So blue had an ungodly advantage in this depiction here. So for the next episode, what we'll be doing is seeing how this life has developed into multicellular, to make sure that there's still a little bit of balance though. I'll be randomly rolling to find out which organisms are going to be more predatory and which ones are going to be more sedentary. So just finding out where these organisms will be in the totem poles. The other catch as well, with only one organism developing plastids, it meant that only carbon dioxide was being photosynthesized away, which means there is still a large amount of sulfur dioxide in the atmosphere. So that is going to have to be taken up by another organism. That will likely be taken up by another organism in any given scenario, so that's going to be placed into the next episode. But I'd like to hear your opinions on what you think works for this system, what you would say would be an improvement, and if you'd be interested in this being further developed. I have been thinking about taking some proper programming and 3D modeling courses to actually develop my skills in that, and hopefully one day actually produce a game from all these videos. So let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then.